My name is Amelia, and if someone had told me a few years ago how my life would turn out, I wouldn't have believed them. I grew up in a fairly normal family, well, normal by our standards. My dad owned a small window frame business, which kept him busy most of the time, and my mom stayed at home to take care of the house. We weren't rich, but we had enough to live comfortably. Dad never really talked much about his work when he was home. He would come in late, give my mom a quick kiss, and ask me how my day at school was. That was pretty much it. I didn't mind, though. I was happy in my own little world, dreaming about the future and enjoying life without a care. But all of that changed one day, one moment, really. I was 21, fresh out of college, and trying to figure out what to do with my life. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I wanted to make my parents proud. Then one evening, while passing Dad's home office, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was tense, almost angry. "No, absolutely not. I won't let you take over my company. I've worked too hard for this," he said. I froze in place, my S-login act tightening. I shouldn't have eavesdropped, but I couldn't help it. Something was very wrong. My dad's business was in trouble, and someone was trying to take it away from him. Why hadn't he told us? That night at dinner, I couldn't stop watching him. He seemed normal, laughing and joking with Mom about her overcooked pot roast. But I noticed things I hadn't before: the worry lines on his forehead, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. He was trying to hide it, but he was stressed. I felt helpless. I didn't know anything about running a business, but I couldn't just sit back and watch everything my dad had built fall apart. I decided to do something, even if I wasn't sure what that something was. The next day, I started digging around to find out who was causing the trouble. It didn't take long to figure out that a big-shot businessman named Ethan was behind it. He was trying to take over my dad's company. Caldwell's office wasn't far from where we lived, so I decided to go see him in person. When I arrived at his building, I felt nervous, but I walked straight to the receptionist and asked to see Mr. Caldwell. She looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, but it's really important. Please, I just need 5 minutes," I begged. Maybe she felt sorry for me, or maybe she just wanted to get rid of me, but after a quick phone call, she waved me toward the elevator. "Top floor," she said. The ride-up felt like it took forever. My palms were sweaty, and I could feel my heart pounding. When the elevator doors opened, I found myself face-to-face with Ethan. He looked older than I'd expected, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. Well, he said, looking me up and down. "What do we have here?" I swallowed hard and stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell, my name is Amelia. I'm here to talk to you about my father's company, Thompson Windows." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Thompson's daughter? Now, this is unexpected. Come in, let's talk." I followed him into his large, luxurious office, trying not to get distracted by the stunning view of the city's skyline. He sat behind his massive desk and gestured for me to take a seat. "So, Miss Thompson, what can I do for you?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Please, don't take over my father's company. It means everything to him. There has to be another way." Caldwell leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was some sort of puzzle he was trying to solve. After a long pause, he said, "Interesting. I might be willing to leave your father's company alone, but I have a proposition for you." My heart raced. "What kind of proposition?" He smiled, and it wasn't the kind of smile that put you at ease. "I'll back off if you agree to marry my son." I stared at him, sure I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said calmly. "Marry my son. He needs someone to help him grow up and take life seriously. Do that and your father's company is safe." I left his office feeling like I was in some kind of strange dream. Marry his son? Was he serious? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't have many options. If I didn't agree, my dad could lose everything he'd worked so hard for. The next day, I went back to Caldwell's office, determined to do what I had to for my family. He greeted me with the same smug smile as before. "So, Miss Thompson, have you made your decision?" I nodded, my hands clenched into fists to keep them from shaking. "Yes, I'll do it. I'll marry your son." Caldwell clapped his hands together, clearly pleased. Excellent. Let me introduce you to him. Before I could say anything, he was leading me into another room. And there he was, Ethan's son. I had expected someone stiff and businesslike, but the man who stood up to greet me was the exact opposite. He was tall, with messy dark hair and a crooked smile that made him look approachable, almost charming. "Hey," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm William. You must be Amelia." I shook his hand, trying to hide my surprise. "Yeah, that's me." Before I could say anything else, Ethan cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted." The door closed behind him, and I was left alone with William. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. William's relaxed attitude disappeared the moment we were alone. He ran a hand through his messy hair, looking awkward and a bit unsure of himself. "Look," he began, his voice quieter now, "I'm really sorry about all this. My dad, well, he's got these old-fashioned ideas, you know?" I tried to act like it wasn't a big deal, shrugging casually. "It's fine. We're adults, right? We can handle it." William let out a short laugh, but it sounded forced. "Yeah, sure. Just a completely casual, modern-day arranged marriage. No pressure at all," he said, rolling his eyes. We ended up talking for the next hour, and, to my surprise, William wasn't as bad as I'd imagined. He was funny, sharp, and easy to talk to, even though I could tell he wasn't exactly the responsible type. Still, there was something about him, something genuine under all the sarcasm and awkwardness. I started to understand why his father wanted him to grow up so badly. The next few weeks felt surreal. William and I began dating, if you could even call it that. We went out for dinners, caught a few movies, and even took walks in the park. On the surface, it looked like we were a normal couple. But beneath all of it, there was this unshakable awkwardness. We both knew this wasn't real. No matter how much we pretended, it was just part of the deal. And then, 6 months after that strange day in Ethan's office, I found myself walking down the aisle. My dad walked beside me, beaming with pride. He looked so happy, so proud. He had no idea about the deal I'd made to save his company, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him. As I said my vows, I looked into William's eyes. There was no love there, not really. But there was a hint of understanding, maybe even friendship. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined as a little girl, but I told myself it could be enough for now. The reception was a whirlwind of laughter, congratulations, and champagne. I barely had time to breathe before William's mother, Ava, found me. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to the family, dear," she said, her tone sweet but sharp. "I do hope you'll make William happy." I forced a polite smile, matching her energy. "I'll certainly try, Mrs. Caldwell." As William and I left for our honeymoon, I caught sight of Ethan. He looked so pleased with himself, like he'd just won a chess game he had no doubt he'd dominate from the start. My chest tightened with anger. To him, this wasn't about love or family, it was a business deal, plain and simple. The first few years of our marriage were interesting to say the least. William and I settled into a routine, though it felt more like we were roommates than husband and wife. We lived in a beautiful house, courtesy of his father's money, but it didn't feel like home. Despite everything, I tried my best to be a good influence on William. Slowly but surely, I started to see changes in him. He spent less time partying with his wild friends and more time at the office, working with his father. For the first time, Ethan seemed genuinely proud of his son. I'll admit, it made me feel like maybe this whole arrangement wasn't for nothing. William's mother, on the other hand, was a different story. Ava never outright said anything rude, but I could feel her disapproval in the way she looked at me. It was in her tight smiles, her raised eyebrows, and her cutting remarks disguised as compliments. "Oh, Amelia, that dress is interesting," she'd say with a faint smirk. "So brave of you to wear something like that." I'd grit my teeth and smile politely. "Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell," I'd reply, trying not to let her get under my skin. Despite all the challenges, I held on to hope. Maybe William and I could grow to love each other over time. Maybe, when we had children, things would change. I thought kids would bring us closer, make our marriage feel real. But life had other plans. One crisp fall afternoon, William and I sat in the doctor's office. The silence between us was heavy, like a cloud we couldn't escape. The doctor's voice was kind but firm as he delivered the news. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "but the tests show that you, Mr. Caldwell, are unable to father children." The words hit me like a physical blow. No children. The one thing I had been counting on to bring us closer, to give our marriage real meaning, was now impossible. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts wandered to my parents. My dad's business had flourished since my marriage to William. He'd even managed to double his profits. I was happy for him, truly, but deep down I felt lost. I wanted more for myself. I wanted to work, to have a purpose beyond just being William's wife. When I brought it up to him one evening, his reaction was swift and firm. "Work? Why would you need to work?" he asked, frowning. "We have more than enough money." "It's not about the money, William," I explained. "I want to do something meaningful. I need something that's mine." He shook his head, his tone dismissive. "In our circle, wives don't work. It's just not done." I stared at him, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. William wasn't a bad person, but he was trapped in the same world of expectations and appearances as his parents. And now, so was I. But I wasn't sure how much longer I could live this way. William's easygoing attitude disappeared as soon as we were alone. He raked his hand through his messy hair, clearly uncomfortable. "Look," he said, hesitating, "I'm really sorry about all this. My dad, well, he's stuck in the past, you know? He has these old-school ideas." I try to shrug it off like it didn't bother me. "It's fine. We're adults, right? We can handle this." William let out a short, forced laugh.
"Yeah, sure.
"Just your everyday, casual arranged marriage. Totally normal," he said, rolling his eyes. Despite the awkward situation, we ended up talking for a while. To my surprise, William wasn't as bad as I'd thought. He was funny, smart, and had a charming side I didn't expect. Sure, he came across as a little immature and careless, but I could tell there was more to him. Maybe that's why his father was so desperate to push him into this situation, to make him grow up. As weeks turned into months, William and I settled into a strange rhythm. We went out on dates, dinners, movies, walks in the park, but it always felt a bit forced. No matter how hard we tried, there was this invisible wall between us. We both knew this wasn't real. It wasn't love. Over time, William's father started to push me towards something he thought might fill my time in this new role as William's wife. "Why don't you start a foundation or something?" he suggested one evening. And so, the Amelia Caldwell Foundation for Children with Cancer was born. It wasn't the life I'd imagined for myself, but it gave me a purpose. I poured my heart into the work, organizing fundraisers, visiting hospitals, and meeting families. It was exhausting but fulfilling. William, however, didn't seem interested in my new passion. In fact, he barely acknowledged it. He didn't seem to care much about anything I was doing. It felt like we were living separate lives, sharing the same house but rarely crossing paths. 10 years passed this way, and then everything changed again. William's father died suddenly of a heart attack. One moment, he was running the family empire, and the next, he was gone. Just like that, William was thrust into the role of CEO. I tried to be there for him, to support him, but I could see how much he was struggling with the weight of his new responsibilities. 2 years later, we were hit with more devastating news. William's mother, Ava, was diagnosed with cancer. "We should move her to a care facility," William said, his voice flat, almost detached. "They'll take better care of her there." But Ava refused. "I will not leave my home," she said firmly, her chin raised in defiance. Drawing on my years of experience with the foundation, I stepped in. I hired nurses, coordinated her treatments, and spent hours by her bedside. To my surprise, Ava's attitude toward me started to change. One afternoon, as I was fluffing her pillows, she reached out and took my hand. Her grip was weak, but her words were strong. "You're a good woman, Amelia," she said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Tears filled my eyes, and I squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell," I whispered, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. But even as I formed a bond with Ava, things between William and me grew worse. 5 years had passed since William took over the company, and instead of rising to the occasion, he seemed to be spiraling. He started drinking heavily, staying out late, and snapping at me over the smallest things. One day, I got a call from his assistant. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said hesitantly, "I'm sorry to bother you, but William hasn't been to the office in days. Is everything okay?" That night, William stumbled through the door reeking of alcohol. I confronted him immediately. "William, what's going on? Your assistant called me. You haven't been to work." He laughed bitterly, slumping onto the couch. "Work? What's the point? The company's going under anyway." Dear old Dad left me a sinking ship, and I couldn't keep it afloat. I stared at him, stunned. All those years of his father's hard work, gone. And William didn't even seem to care. Desperate to salvage something, I reached out to my father, who was semi-retired but still sharp when it came to business. He agreed to help and even offered William a position as his deputy, hoping to mentor him back to success. But William didn't take it seriously. He showed up late, left early, and did the bare minimum. I watched helplessly as my father's sales began to drop. One night, after William had been drinking again, I decided enough was enough. "William," I said firmly, "we need to talk about work. You're barely showing up, and my father's company is suffering because of you." His face twisted with anger. "Oh, so now it's my fault? I never wanted this, Jules. Any of it. What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "This life. This marriage. I'm just waiting for Mom to kick the bucket, so I can sell her house and get out of here." I stared at him, horrified. "How can you say that? Your mother is dying and all you care about is her money. Don't act all high and mighty," he snapped. "We both know this marriage is a sham. You're just as eager to get out as I am." Disgusted, I turned to leave the room. As I opened the door, I found Ava standing there. The look on her face told me she'd heard everything. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, silently, she reached out and squeezed my hand. In that single gesture, I felt her gratitude, her sorrow, and her quiet strength. A few months later, tragedy struck again. My parents were on a small plane to Hawaii, taking what was supposed to be a romantic second honeymoon. The plane crashed and they were gone just like that. At their funeral, I stood by their graves, feeling completely alone. William didn't even bother to show up. My own husband couldn't be there when I needed him most. As I watched their caskets lowered into the ground, something inside me shifted. Sorrow gave way to anger. How dare William abandon me in my darkest hour? Fueled by that anger, I marched into my father's old office, determined to take control of my life. What I saw made my blood boil. William was lounging in my dad's chair, barking orders like he owned the place. "William," I said, my voice tight with barely controlled rage, "we need to talk." He looked up, annoyed. "What is it now, Jules? Can't you see I'm busy?" "Busy?" I snapped. "You couldn't even bother to be busy enough to come to my parents' funeral." He rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go again with the moralizing. You know what, Jules? I'm tired of this. Tired of you. Tired of me," I said, shocked. "Yeah," he said coldly. "Always nagging, always pushing. Well, guess what? I'm done with it. And I'm done with you." I stared at William, completely stunned. His anger had melted away, replaced by something far worse, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. "You know, Jules," he said, his voice suddenly calm, almost too calm. "This company? It's worth about $20 million. And guess what? As deputy director, it's all mine now." My heart sank. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. He leaned back in my dad's chair, with a smug grin. "I have all the passwords, all the access. I'm in charge now. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "You've already destroyed your father's company. I won't let you ruin my father's legacy, too. William laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, I'm not going to ruin it, he sneered. I'm going to sell it.
Piece by piece.
And then, I'm going to live like a king. Before I could stop him, he turned to the computer and started typing. I watched in horror as he transferred a large sum of money from the company's account to his personal one. There, he said, turning back to me with a satisfied smirk. That should keep me comfortable for a while. Then, as if this whole situation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, he opened a desk drawer and pulled out a stack of papers. Tossing them onto the desk, he said casually, "Oh, and these. Divorce papers. I think it's time we ended this little farce, don't you?" I caught the papers instinctively, my mind spinning. This couldn't be happening. It was all too much. My parents were gone, my marriage was over, and now William was trying to steal my father's company right in front of me. I left the office in a daze, clutching the divorce papers like they were the only thing tethering me to reality. But as I walked, something inside me shifted. I'd spent years bending to William's will, years of being manipulated by him and his family. No more. It was time to fight back. With renewed determination, I went straight to my father's lawyer, Mr. Tyler. He had been Dad's friend and confidant for years. If anyone could help me now, it was him. "Amelia," he said warmly as I entered his office. Rising to his feet, he shook my hand. "I'm so sorry about your parents. How are you holding up?" I collapsed into the chair across from him, the day's events spilling out in a rush. William's betrayal, the money transfer, the divorce, it all came pouring out. Mr. Tyler listened patiently, his expression growing more serious with every word. When I finally finished, he leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "Amelia," he said slowly, "I think it's time I shared something with you. Your father made some changes to his will just before the accident." My heart raced as he opened a folder and began reading. "The company," he said, looking up at me with a twinkle in his eye. "It's yours. Your father left it to you, not William." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Relief washed over me, but Mr. Tyler wasn't done.
"There's more," he said.
"Your father dismissed William 2 weeks before his death. Fired him outright." I couldn't help it, I laughed. A real, genuine laugh, the first one in what felt like forever. "So all those orders William's been giving? Completely meaningless," Mr. Tyler confirmed with a nod. Then he handed me an envelope. "And this," he said gently. "Your father left you a letter." With trembling hands, I opened it. The familiar handwriting blurred as tears filled my eyes. "My dearest Amelia, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry for leaving you like this, but I hope I've left you with the tools to build the life you deserve. The company is yours now, and Jules, it's time to let go of William. You've given enough of yourself to that marriage. It's time to live for you. I love you, sweetheart. Make me proud.
Love, Dad."
I wiped my eyes and looked up at Mr. Tyler. "Do you have a pen?" I asked. Without a word, he handed me one. Taking a deep breath, I signed the divorce papers William had thrown at me earlier. With each stroke of the pen, I felt lighter, freer. "Can you file these for me?" I asked, handing the papers back. "I want this done as quickly as possible." Mr. Tyler smiled. "Consider it done." As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. For the first time, I was in control of my own life. No more William. No more Caldwell's pulling the strings. On impulse, I pulled out my phone and called Abigail, my best friend from the charity foundation. "Abigail, it's Amelia. Want to meet for coffee? I've got some news." An hour later, we were sitting in our favorite cafe, lattes in hand. "So," Abigail said, eyeing me curiously, "what's this big news?" I took a deep breath and let it all out. The company, the divorce, the letter from Dad. When I finished, Abigail reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Girl, you're free. And now, you're the boss," she said, grinning. I smiled, but I couldn't help feeling a little nervous. "I don't know, Abigail. Can I really run a company?" She gave me a look that could have melted steel. Are you kidding me, Amelia? You've been running that foundation like a pro for years. You're smart, you're organized, and you actually care about people. You're going to be an amazing CEO. Her confidence gave me the boost I needed. After our coffee, I knew it was time to face the music. I needed to get my things from William's house. Not our house, William's house. Deep down, I'd never thought of it as mine, and now I knew why. I found Ava, my mother-in-law, sitting in the living room. Her face was pale and drawn, the toll of her long battle with cancer evident in her tired eyes. Ava, I said softly, stepping closer, I'm here to get my things. William and I were getting divorced. To my surprise, her eyes filled with tears. She looked up at me, her voice trembling. Amelia, I know I haven't always treated you kindly, but you've been so good to me, especially these past few years. Would you consider taking me with you? I froze, stunned. You want to come with me? Before she could answer, the front door slammed open. William stormed in, his face red with anger. You, he bellowed, pointing a finger at me. What the hell did you do? The company accounts are blocked. I can't access the money. I straightened my back and met his furious gaze, refusing to back down. That money isn't yours, William. It never was. And by the way, my father fired you 2 weeks before he passed. You have no claim to the company anymore. I've already instructed security to block your access to the building. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then his eyes darted to the suitcase Ava had been packing. Mom, what are you doing? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Ava looked at her son, her face a mixture of sadness and determination. I'm going with Amelia, she said firmly. I'm sorry, William, but you've proven to be unreliable. I can't stay here anymore. William's face turned an even deeper shade of red. Unreliable?
Me?
This is all your fault, he shouted, jabbing a finger toward her. You raised me to be this way. You and your coddling and ridiculous expectations. He turned to me next, his voice dripping with venom.
Fine.
Get out, both of you. I don't need either of you. I felt a pang of pity for him as I looked at the man I had once thought I'd spend my life with. He was bitter, angry, and completely broken, a far cry from the charming, if flawed, person I had married. But I couldn't let myself be swayed by those feelings anymore. Come on, Ava, I said gently. Let's get your things. As we packed, William continued his tirade, shouting insults and blaming everyone but himself for his failures. We ignored him, focused on getting out. The drive to my parents' house was quiet. Ava dozed in the passenger seat, worn out from the stress of the day. When we arrived, I felt a lump form in my throat. The house felt so different without Mom and Dad. We're here, I said softly, gently waking Ava. She stirred and looked at me with a tired smile. I helped her inside and led her to my parents' bedroom. Her eyes widened as she took in the cozy space. Are you sure, Amelia? She asked hesitantly. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears.
Yes.
I think they would have wanted it this way. As I helped her settle in, a wave of emotions washed over me. Grief for my parents, relief at being free from William, and uncertainty about what lay ahead. But beneath it all, there was a glimmer of hope. Taking over my father's company felt like diving into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim. Those first few months were overwhelming, a whirlwind of meetings, financial reports, and sleepless nights. But I was determined to make it work. To help me navigate the complexities of running a multi-million-dollar business, I hired Logan, a brilliant business consultant. He became my right-hand man, patiently guiding me through the challenges. You've got good instincts, Amelia, he'd say. Trust them. Slowly but surely, I found my footing. 6 months in, I wasn't just keeping the company afloat. I was thriving. The company's performance began to improve, and I felt a deep sense of pride, knowing my dad would have been proud too. At the same time, I never neglected the Cancer Foundation. In fact, my work there became even more meaningful. It was a connection to my past and a beacon for my future. Ava's health, however, continued to decline. I threw myself into her care, determined to make her final days as comfortable as possible. During those 2 years, we grew close in a way I never thought possible. We healed old wounds and formed a bond that felt more like mother and daughter than in-laws. The day she passed away, I held her hand and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Ava." She gave me a weak squeeze and a small smile before slipping away peacefully. I organized the funeral myself, wanting everything to be perfect. William didn't show up. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt to see how far he had fallen. A few weeks after the funeral, I received a call from Mr. Tyler. "Amelia," he said, "there's something you need to see. Can you come to my office?" When I arrived, I was shocked to find William already there. A young blonde clung to his arm, her smile fading as she glanced at me. William smirked, his tone dripping with mockery. "Well, if it isn't the little CEO. Don't worry, Jules. I'm just here to collect my inheritance. Mom and I may not have seen eye to eye, but blood is thicker than water, right?" I clenched my jaw, biting back a response. Instead, I waited for Mr. Tyler to begin reading Ava's will. As the lawyer spoke, I watched William's smug grin slowly morph into disbelief and then raw anger. "And so," Mr. Tyler concluded, "I leave my house and all my savings to Amelia, with the condition that the money be donated to the Cancer Foundation she so passionately supports." Tears welled in my eyes as Ava's final act of kindness overwhelmed me. William, on the other hand, exploded. "This is bullshit," he yelled, slamming his fist on the desk. "She manipulated Mom. She's a fraud, a gold digger. She ruined my life, and now she's stealing my inheritance." The blonde by his side looked horrified. "Wait," she said, stepping away from him. "You told me we'd be set for life with this money. I'm out of here." She stormed out, leaving William sputtering in anger. As I left the office, his ranting faded behind me. I felt light, free. Ava's gift wasn't just about the money. It was her way of saying she had seen me, truly seen me, and found me worthy. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. And this time, I was ready to take on whatever came next.